So in other news, which is a pun, which you don't get yet, but you'll get soon enough. So that's the best part. So a recent pro-life tip on Reddit boils down to this: the best way to improve your mental health is to just not read the news. Avoid it at all costs. It's just too sad. So this recent post was upvoted more than almost 58,000 times. And so I ask you this: is the media an obscene exploitation mill selling fear to the masses only to enrich itself, one which we have the imperative to avoid to save our very minds? Or do we have a virtuous obligation to the foundations of humanity, nay, of democracy, to stay informed and hold truth to power? Or in short, is that good advice or is that just like a load of shit?
Yes.
Yes, there we go. Hell yeah. But no, is it good advice to avoid the news for your mental health, or is that bullshit?
I think I'd co-sign that.
You'd co-sign?
In general.
Full disclosure here, I was a journalism major in college, so I love the freedom of the press more than a lot of people. And the only reason I'm not in journalism is because it pays like shit and there's not any jobs. So like, I wish more people would read the news. But I think it's pretty obvious. It's the yes, all of the above. But my overarching, if I have to give an answer to this one way or the other, it's you have to pay attention to the news. The fact of the matter is that we're right. The corporate media is, for the most part, run by power-hungry egomaniacs looking to control the population. But by avoiding the news, you're giving up all the power that you have in understanding what's going on in our world. And if you don't engage, then you cannot participate in our democracy well. You will then just be poorly informed, engage poorly. And honestly, it's a sign of your ability to exist in this world as a dominant or a servant of the society and saying, I don't need to pay attention. I will let the powers that be make every choice that needs to be made for me.
I mean, that sounds great and all, but like, would you guys agree that I feel like most news is mostly commentary, right?
I mean, okay, so there's like, I feel like we could kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Bifurcate?
Bifurcate.
Bifurcate. Thank you, smart guy. That seemed like an insult. I'm sorry. No, like genuinely, thank you. I feel like we could bifurcate like into the big print media and then like the big television media, right? So there's like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and then there's like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and then like that might be it for like the big print ones. I don't know. I'm not the smart guy. Colin, you were talking. Go ahead.
I mean, are they that different? I don't know. I mean, there is like, I guess, something you could say about legacy media. I mean, WAPO is owned by you know who, and
Voldemort out here running newspapers. He fucking would have beat Harry Potter if he had just started the Muggle Tribune or whatever the fuck it is. So I have really strong opinions about this. Obviously, as most of the people in here know, as part of why I'm excited to be here today. But it's you must separate the corporate media from the independent media and other factors. So when it's like you shouldn't pay attention to the news, I agree. You should not be watching CNN. I mean, CNN, propaganda network. Fox News, propaganda network. MSNBC, fuck you all, real news. But most people would also say a propaganda network. But when you're looking at, like, if you wanted to avoid all of that, I would 100% support you. But you can't lump in local journalism. You can't lump in nonprofit journalism. I mean, if you said, look, I only am going to listen to NPR. I know that it's not perfect. I fucking hate them sometimes. But at least it's not that barrage of clickbait stories, mind control to keep you sucking on working your job and being depressed and going day in and day out. But it
Craig, we literally, I just gotta say, we literally just passed on an NPR story about which color emoji you should use. So like, I don't know, man.
I was in on that one personally. I thought that was a good story. But yeah, I mean, fucking pass on all opinion news. But I mean, the real answer is, as always, we need to start a state-run news media organization.
Isn't that NPR?
No, NPR is actually a privately run corporation that receives some public funding. So it's also still run by a bunch of old white guys. Like, it's also just run by similar people that are trying to maintain the status quo. But I mean, we should have talked about the Zucker departure at CNN. I mean, that's probably the biggest media landscape change that's going to happen in the next 10 years, I would say, until Rupert Murdoch dies. And that will be a death I celebrate.
So I don't want to be, I feel like, I don't know, like the past couple of episodes, I do feel like I've been like a little trigger happy with the word psyop. But like when I read this reminds me, this reminds me of like
Word
the
of the
woke
century.
CIA. Yeah, like it reminds me of the woke CIA ad. Like pretty soon they're going to be like, if you have anxiety, you're going to get like a pass. You'd be like, oh, actually, I don't need to be informed. I have like generalized anxiety disorder. Or like, oh, don't worry. Like, if the protest makes you sad, like you don't have to go. Like, don't worry about it at all. And like one of the like top comments that I read, like the guy was like, "This is the best advice I've ever gotten. Was to like read and not watch the news, and I only read AP news. And this advice was given to me by a professional therapist." So like the fact that like therapists are prescribing like how many times a week you can read news, I was like, all right, like this is culturally like very bizarre. Like it just seems like a very like a convergence of an extremely strange cultural moment where there's like so much pandering to the individual. We're like giving people a pass for like not having to do the legwork of like finding out what's going on. Like I don't know what you guys think of that.
Well, but like this is a function of being part of a democracy, right? If we were in an authoritarian government and the news was not free, say we lived in China, you just don't pay attention to the news because there's no point. But if you want to live and participate in a democracy, you need to understand what's going on so you can make choices involved in running of society. But I'll be honest, you're probably happier not having to understand what's going on because it's fucking hard.
Do you think that it's the place of a therapist to even make that call then and say that you can tune out if it's good for your anxiety, if maybe it's not good for the welfare of your... God, I hate saying it like this. The welfare of your nation. I feel like a fucking QAnoner.
As somebody that my mom's a therapist and I love that everybody should be going to therapy all the time. It's a privilege. It's an honor.
Everybody should be going to Craig's mom all the time.
oh, don't get me started.
It's like an anti your mom joke.
Give her
like,
a
yeah,
call.
I saw your mom for therapy. She was actually very helpful. Thank you.
I think that's one of those things where it's like for some people with anxiety, maybe you need to tune out from the news for a while. And then that guy just goes, no, my therapist says nobody should be paying attention to the news. And it's like, okay, this is for you, not for society as a whole.
Hasn't there been studies, correct me if I'm wrong, that social media use tends to like increase anxiety and depression, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these social media platforms are now like the brokerage of news, correct? So it's kind of like they're intersecting. So, I mean, I just like, it's such a huge problem that like, I don't know how do you get to like Craig's point of like being an informed citizen because like they're all so connected. It's like, okay, avoid news, but what that kind of really means is like get off social media in my head.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook named the damn thing the news feed. Like,
True, yeah.
I 100% agree with you.
Okay, so this post has almost 58,000 upvotes. So what do you think it is that people that are drawing people to relate to this idea, that to like kind of like express their support for the fact that like, yeah, you know what, fucking tune out. Is it privilege? Is it like these are just like a bunch of like middle class people who are like, I don't fucking care, like this doesn't affect me, I don't give a shit, you know? Or like, is it yeah. Can it boil down to something that simple?
Let me ask a broad question to you guys before I answer this. Do you guys think that you kind of get a sense of the general news du jour just via osmosis without even seeking it out? Because I feel like I sort of do.
I don't actually. This is kind of funny. The most news I end up like the fucking hypocrite for even being the one reading the story. I'm pretty detached from the news these days in general. Like most of the news I get is in preparation for these episodes from Ian, who's like, he sends me like 30 news articles. He's like, Shay, pick some that you like and we'll talk about them. And that's like basically how this show is made. But like I stay pretty far out of it. And like, yeah, I hear things like my girlfriend will tell me some things, it'll come up in conversation. But then like generally most of the time I get get the points that matter. And maybe this is a confirmation bias actually, but when I look into it further, I'm like, oh yeah, yep, I already I knew this. I was like, oh, that's an interesting detail, supportive, to like over the larger picture. But yeah, Colin, to your point, like I feel like I get it.
Well, the reason I asked that is because like the whole like, oh, are you privileged? But like sometimes I think the flip side is like, is it a bit? Sometimes I think there's a bit of narcissism in the like being informed, in the sense of like, oh, I'm posting a lot on Twitter, like I'm doing my part, and it's like I don't know, like there's like a lot of questions I like have to ask about that. Like I don't know, like everyone is very informed the past 5 years. I feel like the Great Awakening. But like, has that materialized into anything? Is like being informed, like, what does that mean? Like, are you just having something in your head? Is it leading to like real action? Like, I don't know. Like, there's big questions around this.
It does seem to be more like a bit of like virtue signaling. And like when I looked through like the comments on this, like, yeah, it has like, to Shay's point, it's got like 58,000 upvotes. People were like, yes, queen. But then most of the comments were like, fuck you, you piece of shit. Like, what? Like, this is trash advice. Like, fuck you and your family. Like, way to go, idiot. Which does, like, I mean, like, I think it brings to mind like this question of like, what does it mean to be informed? Like, yeah, like I can know a lot of shit, but I think I think Americans generally have like a very superficial, like surface understanding of like world events, let alone like things going on in their own country. Like a news story could be like, oh, there's this guy running for Senate in Louisiana and he smoked weed in his campaign ad. Like, that's not news necessarily. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, this guy is like running. Like, I don't know anything about his. I'm guessing by his platform that he's pro marijuana because he's smoking a doobie. But Craig looks like he really wants to say something. Yeah. So I'll pass it off to Craig.
I really do, because I think this is really important, because I agree with Colin. Right? Is most of us.
Why don't you agree with me, Craig? I was the one who just finished speaking.
That's why he was waiting for you to stop talking, Ian.
Yeah, it's the somewhat facial hair brigade, and everybody except for you is in it.
Fuck off, Craig.
Look, some of us can do it, and some of us can't. It's okay. But
this is toxic.
Yeah, it's this idea, right, that we're on social media absorbing the news by osmosis, but the best, most positive, most informative, most news that doesn't make me feel like shit that I read is when I actually pick up a fucking newspaper or a newspaper app and read the damn articles. And whenever I go on a Reddit comment thread, it's like, this shit sucks. Fuck you. We're all gonna fucking die. And it's like, if you go and talk to the experts, they're like, no, like, I mean, like, maybe it'd be bad, but like, it'll be okay. But like, if you go in, Ukraine, so hot right now. But if you go in and in the Reddit comments, it's like, we're literally all gonna die. If you go into any climate change article, and this is how I got started in climate activism, was because I got so fucking scared that I was like, we're all gonna die so fast, like it's not gonna be at all. And spoiler, it might still happen. But when you talk to and read from the experts, they're like, here's what's happening, here's what's going, and it makes me actually feel better. It's the same thing with nearly every news story. When you go into the comments, it's because of the way that our algorithms are currently set up to reward that type of engagement, because the best way to get engagement is to start a fucking fight. And by scaring people and starting a fight, that's what makes us scared and miserable.
I mean, that's a great point. It's like the engagement is mostly about the headlines and not the content, right?
Yeah. I feel like, sorry, Colin threw me off. Shay, edit this part out. Edit me floundering and like just groping blindly. No, you're fine.
I got you with the beard comment, didn't I?
I'm fucking reeling, dude. There's no way I can recover from that. My career is over. No, but fuck, dude, it's gone. Shit. Damn it. All right. Okay, someone else say something. I'll just like try to remember.
Well, the virtue signaling.
Well, now I'm floundering.
Yeah.
Well, the virtue signaling comment is actually really fascinating, and that's like something I hadn't like. It's like, you know, I hadn't thought about that in like a long time, because it's like I actually get totally off of social media. I'm like super fucking isolated from news and the happenings. And I got to say, like, you know, it's weird. It's like a causation thing, because I quit a bunch of shit at the same time. Like I quit drinking and porn and like social media and
in a minute he's going to ask you about Scientology, so just defenses up.
Join my detox program.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's like a bunch of different things, but like I like absolutely feel happier and like trying to get back into the news now in the last, couple weeks or so, like really in preparation for talking about shit again. Like it's been an interesting reawakening to this kind of stuff. And I mean, I agree, like most of the time I'm reading these full articles and like it's not as terrifying as it was before. And I'm also, Craig, I'm the fucking person, I think you were the one who said this, I'm the person who like, I'll just put on NPR. It's like my main news source is like, that's all I listen to. And I put on Morning Edition, listen to the whole thing, and like stupid fucking articles come up. It's like, I don't care about this at all. And, and then, but which is actually kind of nice because then it's not like all gloom and doom, which, it's like makes for a more positive, ignore like, background noise experience, which is how I'm really listening to it anyway. But it is, I don't know. It's interesting, but the virtue signaling aspect of it is truly pretty fascinating because I remember that being like a big part of like why I would get into news too. I'd be like, I'm sharing this, and like people would respond to me, and then I'd be like, how can you fucking believe that, you piece of shit? And it's like almost a dopamine release just even from that. You're just like, oh my god, like I feel this right now.
Well, I think the interesting thing is that I used to share the virtue signal. Nowadays, I don't share the virtue signal because while I support it, and that might be a disagreement than other people in this chat.
That's interesting.
I share to fuck with the algorithms, right? That's why I'm sharing and liking stuff. Yeah.
How does Craig, do you think you're in the fucking Matrix? Like, what do you mean you're fighting the algorithm? Like, what the hell are you talking
100%.
You'll have to walk us through that. How does that work?
So the way an algorithm, my base ass understanding of algorithms, and Colin as a fucking genius probably can understand this more than me.
Yeah, our smart guy.
Yeah, our smart guy. The Facebook, the Twitter, all these algorithms are pushing content to other people based on how much it's interacted with. And so my Twitter feed, which first of all fucking rules, but is also followed by like 8 people, and the only person that engages is my mom, which is like really embarrassing.
Who's your therapist also?
Yeah. But by me sharing it, it boosts its amount of the likelihood that it's going to be reshared with someone else. And so that's when I reshare an article and go for that. So then my boost and then my mom's like, I mean, that's 2 more in a sea of, needing to get to 1 million likes before this article gets randomly shown to
How
people.
is that fucking
am I
with
wrong, Colin?
How are you fucking with the algorithm? It sounds like you're playing the game that the algorithm set up for you.
Yeah,
it sounds like
Craig,
you're playing right into his hand.
You just described being on Twitter.
You're right. I'm sorry. I guess I was colloquially, that's how we are out here on the West Coast. It's fucking with the algorithm, playing the game.
I do appreciate like the pep talk you give yourself before like you get online. You're like, fuck yeah, Craig, time to fight the power.
Yeah. It's also why I don't comment on porn subreddits.
I'd hope not. I guess like to comment on like what everyone is kind of saying, like it sounds like we're all on the same page to an extent. Like it sounds like what we need to be talking about more than anything. And there's like 2 things I want to say is like, the first is media literacy, because like just the sheer fact that people are like, like, oh yeah, I'm like super informed, like not necessarily even like having an idea of like what that means. And like Colin and Craig, like you and I have talked about this, like the best way to become informed is probably to like read a fuckload of history textbooks so you can like at least be aware of the context. So when it's like Russia's invading Ukraine, you're not like, fuck, this came out of nowhere. I can't believe that this would happen. And then the other one is like that the other side of this comment or whatever is just like this idea that you can like, that life is just supposed to be this like, I don't know, consumerist experience where you're supposed to like tailor the world to an extent that like you are never not constantly receiving like this unending stream of pleasure. And then anything remotely resembling cognitive dissonance that might like challenge a held belief should just be avoided. Like, if you hear something on the news, like it might not promote what you believe. And it's like, oh, fuck, I can't have that. I better turn this shit off. Like just the sheer fact that like, and that's why I say like, that just seems like psyop shit, right? They're like, shh, just turn it off. Shh, Disney Plus is only $4 a month. Shh, go watch Loki.
Well, and I think that's a home run. I mean, the people in control, the lizards, win when people don't pay attention, and that's just a fact. That's just.
Well, I think but I think it's worse than that though, because it's like it is like sort of like a psyop in the sense in my head that like people are engaging though, but they're engaging with like the headline or something. So you're never actually talking about the real thing. I'll give like a very quick example. It's not really quick, but supposedly, you can edit this out. So supposedly there is, right now traveling nurses are making bank. They're like making like $100K in 3 months.
Damn.
And, allegedly there's been some talk in like Congress about investigating that and trying to like assess the situation. Is everything above board and whatnot? And I saw this post saying like, I'm voting Republican. One of my congressmen like signed this petition saying that they're going to cap the traveling salesmen or traveling nurses, salaries. But then from what I could understand, when you look a little bit further, there's nothing about capping the salary. It's just purely about like investigating this matter. And like, there was hundreds of like posts talking about this thing that wasn't true. And like, that's what I think makes it dangerous. It's like you're tricked into thinking you're engaging, but you're like really not.
When they in the 2016 election and 5-10 years ago or whatever, the fake news problem was people would make fake posts and then post it, and then you would read that and think it was real news. I think us as a consumer of media has started to understand that that's not always legit and to look at the sites that are coming. But if you're not fact checking Reddit comments or Twitter threads, like what the fuck are you doing? And we know for a fact people aren't.
It's so much. It's insane when you think about it, like how much work it takes to engage. Like it's fucking crazy.
Oh, I thought
like,
you were going to say how much work it takes to fact check. I was like, I never fact check. Fuck that. That takes forever. Are you kidding me?
And especially because you're like only doing it to shit you don't agree with too. So like if something scans and you're like, yeah, like this seems like it'd be true because it benefits me. You're just like, fuck yeah, dude, let it roll.
Yeah. I mean, like, how many Reddit comments do I read a day? 1,500 at least.
Holy shit!
I work from home. I work in tech. I got plenty of time.
But it's insane too, because like this is what you get. Like when you just let that ecosystem run amok, you get a fucking convoy of truckers like driving cross country to like fucking blow their horns. I'm like, that sucks too, because like now we lost that to the fash. Like we can't even like now when we're driving, we see a long haul trucker, we can't even like tell him to honk his horn because he's gonna be like, let's go Brandon or some shit. And you're like,
the real casualty there. Yeah,
absolutely. 2 points. I totally agree. We've lost the honk your horn and the okay sign to fascists. Like I liked the okay sign, and then the second one is to Colin's point. These comments might be manipulated out the fucking ass. Do you know how much money $1 billion is? Like, that's how much money the Koch brothers and Elon Musk are sinking into this shit. And they're probably paying people to just upvote shit that makes them look good. Like, you don't think Elon Musk has a Reddit comment farm in Bangladesh that's just running his Elon Musk? Like, come on. Of course that egotistical maniac is.
You know, and anyone who listens to the show is no stranger to the fact that I'm not his biggest fan. And I want him to like take a break and stop working on your rockets and just hurry up and automate the fucking trucks. Like just do it. And I might like you a little bit. Like you might have a real live Twitter fan and not a fucking farm bot.